Hello everyone, I'm your host Dino and welcome to Dinoverse. I'm thrilled to kick off my first video in this channel where we'll dive into some what if narratives in my favorite universes. Some of you might know me from my other channel, Trainer Dino, where I explore what if scenarios in the Pokemon world, but I've decided to branch out into other franchises that I love, starting with the epic Game of Thrones slash A Song of Ice and Fire universe. Our first exploration is a big one. What if Khal Drogo survived? I have always been fascinated by the Dothraki, which reminds me some of the Mongol and the Hun culture, and the fear and the respect that they commanded. Throughout the series, it was clear from the conversations that we witnessed between Robert Baratheon and Ned Stark, and Robert Baratheon and Cersei Lannister, that the Westerosi were both terrified and in awe of the Dothraki's battlefield prowesses, the legends passed down since the Century of Blood. Yet, due to Drogo's tragic demise, we never saw their true potential until the later seasons, and specifically season 7, because in season 8 we didn't get to see anything. So let's not talk about that. But beyond exploring how Drogo's survival might have changed the game, I'm also intrigued by how his presence would impact the War of the Five Kings. His involvement could have reshaped the conflict into a War of the Six Kings, adding a formidable and unpredictable new player into the already tumultuous events of season 1, 2, and mid of season 3, and explore how the character of Daenerys Targaryen might have evolved if Drogo had survived and been by her side, along with their son Rhaego. Let's dive into this thrilling what if and explore the possibilities. Let us begin. In this alternate storyline, Khal Drogo's fate takes a different turn. During the confrontation with his blood rider Kotho, instead of sustaining that injury from his blade, Drogo emerges victorious without a scratch. Moreover, the witch Miri Mazdur, who performed dark blood magic in the original storyline, which led to the death of Drogo and him and Daenerys' son Rhaego, she instead meets her end during the Dothraki's raid on her village, never crossing paths with Daenerys and thus never surviving to do her harm. This is great for Daenerys, as this means by extension her soon-to-be born son Rhaego is also not harmed in this situation. Although Drogo complies with Dany's wishes of preventing his Khalasar from basically SAing the captured woman, he ultimately needs to sell them to the slaver states as per his original plan for gold, which he would use to buy ships in order to sell to Westeros. Now Dany is of course a bit sad at this, but there is nothing they could do. They need the gold and by extension they need the ships after all. After some time, Rhaego is born to the couple while at Yunkai. There is a grand celebration and the wise masters also attend the ceremony, providing the Khalasar with more gold, gifts and even some ships alongside their original payment as a good faith, which was really common for these cities to do in order to prevent the Dothraki from raiding and attacking. Not like they're going to attack them here, but still. Not all of Drogo's men, however, were enthusiastic about traveling across the narrow sea so easily, but a few would actually oppose him as they saw him dispatch Kotho, so they would know better. After a few months, the Khalasar of 40,000 strong is just about ready to sail across the narrow sea when they have a visitor from that place. It's Oberyn Martell, the Red Viper of Dawn, who has come to talk to Drogo and Daenerys on behalf of his brother Doran Martell, the head of House Martell. The conversation between them is mediated by Jorah Mormont, who is familiar with Westeros. Oberyn offers them the support of House Martell, considering their family ties from so long ago. Another Targaryen named Daenerys, having married a Martell from Dorne during the time of Daeron the Good, and the Dornish, and more importantly, the Dornish want revenge for Elia Martell, the sister-in-law of Daenerys. They hold no animosity for Daenerys for the actions that her older brother Rhaegar committed. He also says that Dorne is ready to provide support in form of extra ships and accommodation for the Targaryen and Dothraki army. Now, although the lifestyle of the Dothraki is very chaotic, I believe that the Dornish are the only people who can somewhat put up with that attitude. At last, Oberyn says that in return of their armies, their ships and their accommodations, and more importantly their support in the war, Dany's offspring will have to marry someone from the Martell family in order to keep that promise and mend the wounds that Rhaegar had inflicted on the relationship between House Martell and House Targaryen. When he finds that Dany has a son, he says it's perfect. He will marry Arianne Martell, the daughter of Prince Doran, once he comes of age. Now Drogo is not really the negotiating type here, just ask Viserys. And he's not really convinced by Oberyn's words. In fact, he's a bit annoyed, but Jorah is able to convince him somewhat to at least give it a try. And because he has respect for Jorah due to him saving Daenerys from the assassin earlier, he laments, although reluctantly. Drogo, after agreeing to the deal for the time being, assembles a sizable fleet through a mix of purchases and gifts from the Wise Masters of Yunkai and the ships from Sunspear, which arrive a little later. They are just about enough to ferry the 40,000 strong Dothraki Khalasar across the Narrow Sea for the first time in history. Despite dealing with sea sicknesses and acclimating to the voyage, since the Dothraki are not used to the sea travel, the army remains largely intact upon reaching Sunspear. They are greeted by Doran and Oberyn. Doran arranges for the Dothraki to camp in a village outside of Sunspear, understanding that even the Dornish, who are the most tolerant of the Dothraki culture in Westeros, would prefer to keep some distance from them. Although Drogo's Khalasar isn't thrilled about settling in the Dornish village, they manage to endure it for the time being. During this time, the Targaryen and Dornish alliance receives another visitor in the form of the former Kingsguard, the legendary Barristan Selmy. Dismissed from Joffrey's command, he learns that Daenerys and the Dothraki army have landed in Dorne. Seizing the opportunity to renew his vow to House Targaryen, he travels to Dany's camp and pledges his sword to Daenerys and her son, Rhaego. He vows to protect the Targaryen family and never fail them again as he once did. This, however, raises concern for one Jorah Mormont, who fears that the bold might have attended the small council meetings during Robert's rule, and he might know about Jorah's past as a spy for Varys. Jorah's secret, however, fortunately remains safe for now, as Barristan did not attend any small council meetings. During the First War Council with Daenerys, Drogo, Oberyn, Doran, Jorah, and Barristan, Doran advises waiting a year before taking any action, but Drogo wants to strike King's Landing immediately. There is already a lot of resentment from Drogo being made to settle down in the village. The tensions eventually rise between Drogo and Oberyn. However, Doran, being the skilled mediator, proposes a compromise. Instead of waiting a year, they should wait 6 months to at least let the War of the Five Kings begin, and then make their moves. And also, Drogo's army is a bit seasick and they need some time to acclimate to the Westerosi weather. Drogo is very hesitant in his mind to take orders from this foreigner, but he somewhat laments. Drogo struggles with the complexities of the Westerosi politics and mainly the marriage pact between his son and the Dornish princess. He's hesitant, but Jorah and Barristan guide him somewhat. They ask Daenerys to appeal to his sense of strategy, explaining that not all battles are won by force. This is a foreign land, and they need to rule the Seven Kingdoms, not ravage them and leave them to dust. They need alliances and compromise, especially with the Dornish to reclaim Daenerys' father's throne. Drogo, although still very hesitant, recognizes the need to adapt to the laws of the land to succeed, even if it challenges him. Although Drogo is convinced, his Khalasar grows restless around Sunspear. The tension is palpable as arguments flare between the native Dornish and the Dothraki. Prince Doran feels the strain, recognizing the cultural difference might be too much for his people to handle. The 6-month wait for plans to unfold now seems very risky. With tensions high, Doran and Drogo must act quickly, reassessing the political landscape and making a decisive move in the War of the Five Kings to ease the unrest. The opportunity, however, would soon arise. The Alliance gets to know most of what is happening with the War of the Five Kings, from Joffrey's ascension to Ned Stark's death, Jaime's capture, and ultimately Renly's death. This is a key point. With the death of Renly, the Tyrells find themselves temporarily out of the war picture. Their alliance with Renly is gone. Stannis has taken a significant portion of the Stormland's army to attack King's Landing. This presents an opportunity for the Dornish and the Dothraki alliance to march towards King's Landing. Before this, There stood three different armies on their way to King's Landing, but now, with the Tyrells out and the Stormlanders already marching towards King's Landing, this leaves a straight path from Dawn to the capital. Jorah, Barristan, and Doran correctly predict that since Stannis is marching towards King's Landing, Tywin Lannister would definitely try to intercept them, either by sending aid in the forms of soldier or by traveling to King's Landing himself to protect his family during the siege. They are going to cut the route to King's Landing to take out any reinforcements and attack the city right after. Whoever wins between the Lannister and Stannis won't be in any position to fend off 40,000 Dothraki and 20,000 Dornish men at once. With the plan set, the Dothraki and Dornish army, about 60,000 strong in total, march towards intercepting the road to King's Landing. As they march north on their cavalry, they are not intercepted by the Stormlanders, since the bulk of them are en route to King's Landing through Stannis' fleet. What they don't know is that Tywin Lannister has formed an alliance with the Tyrell army and is also marching towards King's Landing now. Although they expected the Lannister army or even Tywin to come, the Tyrell back in the fold was something that the Dothraki and the Dornish did not expect. This sets both these massive armies on a huge collision course en route to King's Landing. As soon as the Dothraki reach the River Trident and make their camp, they come to find out that Tywin Lannister along with the Tyrells are marching the same way. Now neither of these massive armies can afford to back down. The Dothraki and the Dornish forces had planned to cut off any reinforcements before attacking the city, but they did not anticipate the scale of the Tyrell army supporting Tywin. On one side, the Tyrell-Lannister alliance, roughly 80,000 strong. On the other, the Dothraki and Dornish coalition, 60,000 in strength. Both forces staged near Trident, setting the scene for what would become the second battle at the river. The clash is brutal and bloody. Jorah Mormont fights valiantly, cutting down score of enemies in desperate bid to redeem himself, but unfortunately he is slain by Dickon Tarly. Barristan Selmy, in his second battle of Trident, proves his valor yet again, fighting and slaying Ser Loras after a hard-fought battle between two legendary warriors from different generations. Drogo is in his element, fighting and slaying renowned knights left and right. Although the Dothraki army faces many issues, fighting in the wet soil of the Trident, fighting against armored men, the same can be said about the Lannister and the Tyrell forces not being able to adjust to such a chaotic fighting style. The one person to note in this battle is the Red Viper of Dawn, Oberyn Martell, who cuts a bloody path through to Tywin Lannister, and although he is not able to slay the old lion, he is able to inflict a gashing wound across his arm with his signature poisoned spear. The battle is severe with heavy casualties on both sides. The Dothraki lose between 10 to 15,000 warriors, while the Dornish suffer around 5,000 losses. Despite the toll, they manage to emerge victorious. With the death of Loras, the Tyrell army soon loses its morale. Although Tywin escapes with the wound, his army is completely routed, with just a few thousand soldiers in hand, and he himself being severely poisoned by the spear of the Viper. Unable to receive the reinforcements, this marks the end of Cersei, Joffrey, Tyrion, and Tommen, and also Myrcella, because in this scenario she was never married off to Dawn for obvious reasons. That means despite suffering heavy losses himself, Stannis the Menace is able to win the Iron Throne for the time being. Although the path ahead for the new king is filled with challenges, he must now face the threat of the formidable Dothraki army approaching in a city that has already been ravaged. Now this is where I am going to end this part. What do you think about this story? And what do you think is going to happen next? Let me know in the comments, and also let me know if there is any other what if scenario from any franchise that you would want me to cover. It would be my pleasure. Again, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel, and I will see you all in the next video.